Concerto, along with much more. We continue now with Franz Berwald's Elfenspiel. Thomas Dausgaard conducts the Danish National Symphony Orchestra.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, August 25th Finance Committee meeting at 7:02, and I'm calling this meeting into order. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link listed on the agenda posted on the town calendar. To join the Zoom call from a telephone, please dial the toll-free number 888-475-4499 and then enter web ID 792-737-0353. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting, and computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to speak to request to speak. This agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all listed items may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be also brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any announcements from the committee? Hearing none. Any announcements from the public? Also hearing none. All right, moving on to the chair's report. I don't have anything specifically to discuss. Everything that I have is all brought up in our agenda items, so I'm just going to keep moving us right along. I do have a report to provide from the town manager. She sent me an update this afternoon, and it actually includes the financials as well, so it's kind of a double. This is what she presented to the select board, and I will just go ahead and read it out loud for everyone. So Lufa Farms has submitted their preliminary application to the Massachusetts Office of Business Development, and their Internal Revenue team has moved them forward for consideration for state credits in addition to the TIF. Lufa Farms is working on the required supplemental application, and MOBD will need a validation spreadsheet from the town as part of that review process. Town manager is working with our principal assessor on the estimated valuation for this project that would be inputted on this valuation spreadsheet. Once we have the preliminary estimated valuation, the select board will begin negotiating on a TIF agreement with Lufa Farms. Next up, FY23 state earmarks and funding. We received notification from Senator Cronin's office that we received a $100,000 earmark in the state budget for the Senior Center ADA patio project. We were notified earlier in the state budget process that was $100,000 in the economic development bill for hazardous materials abatement and the demolition at 30 School Street, but we were told last week that this bill was hung up because of fiscal uncertainties related to the 1986 tax law that was activated at the last minute, so this bill has not passed. For 30 School Street hazardous materials and abatement, this project has begun and the existing conditions survey is complete. The next step is the asbestos-containing materials inspection, collection, and testing, with a final report no later than December. The remaining tasks include preparation of 100% bid documents advertising the project around January 2023, and construction, demolition in this case, occurring in the spring of 2023. The special town meeting warrant is open as of now until September 20th, a Tuesday at 5 p.m., and the special town meeting is November 15th at 7 p.m. at the Middle High School auditorium. Town manager will be sending a memo out to all departments, boards, committees, and commissions in the near future to submit possible ARPA projects for the select board to review. The deadline for submission will be September 30th. Lastly, Pond View Commons has filed their comprehensive permit with the Zoning Board of Appeals. The first hearing has been scheduled for Wednesday, September 14th at 7 p.m. at the Town Hall. Any questions or comments that I probably can't answer?
Where's Pondview Commons?
I have no idea.
That's the 40B up on where the chicken farm used to be. Arrow Estates. Same thing.
All right, moving along, we have the FY22 transfers, which an email was sent out by Ms. Brochu explaining what that was in a little bit more detail. Did everyone get a chance at least to read through that?
Yeah.
It made pretty good sense to me. Any discussion about these?
You need a motion to authorize you to sign it. Is that the idea?
That's my preference.
Yeah.
I don't really feel like
I
I
think
need
that's
to
a
sign
good-
it myself. I feel like
Well, and in the past, it's actually been, it's been presented differently as an action by the finance committee, so I think that makes sense to probably do that. So
works for me.
I would move that we authorize the chair to sign the transfer request.
For a second,
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I will go ahead and sign that and submit it retroactively, apparently.
Apparently, that's what we're doing.
Sounds fine. All right, the new Finance Committee member orientation and onboarding. Mr. Baelish, would you like permission to
Okay.
share?
Yes, so I actually have printed some copies here, and it's, I will say that it is still in draft form, but I did run some of this by the town manager and finance director, got some initial comments. I do want to do some editing, but I would love folks to give it a read through and make some comments. I'll put it up on the screen. Okay, I'm not showing I can't share. Can I share?
Kevin has to make you co-host.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
You go into participants.
Got
and then right click.
Got it. I was looking for give permission to share.
Okay. So the approach I took was really to leverage a lot of the other materials that are out there. Let's see. And put together a PowerPoint of, I think it's 5 pages with a very, simple agenda. And I think there's a lot that this could be built on over time and expanded and footnoted, et cetera. But there's a lot of reference material in here too. So the file is kind of large. There may be better ways to do this, but anyway, the overview should look pretty familiar. This is largely what's on the website about what the Finance Committee does and the basic tasks of the Finance Committee. I won't go through and read certainly all of it, but it should be pretty familiar. The next page is just the members. And obviously, Mr. Beardmore is leaving us soon, and we still have another vacancy. This page, the next page is page 4. I tried to find all the relevant materials that would help me to understand what's happening, and I obviously learned a lot over the last year. But I guess I never, I guess I never had one place where I could go to find a lot of the relevant documents. So I tried to put them all here in one page. It's all saved on these pages, all these PDFs. And I think a lot of the town documents you'll recognize, including the 2020 annual report, et cetera, charter, bylaws, policies, and some of the things from the last town meeting. But and Karen found this for me, was the Finance Committee Handbook by the Association of Town Finance Committees, which is actually, I really encourage everybody to look at it if you haven't before. It's a lot of great information at a very digestible level. And it also has a great glossary of terms defining all sorts of things that we hear in this committee. And, I'm sure a lot of people understand what they are, and some of the newer people probably don't, like me. And I can pull that up in a second. Actually, maybe I'll just do that right now, quickly. Certainly, again, won't go through the whole thing. Let's see, do I have that up? No, I don't have it up. Okay. I can pull that up in a sec. And then the other resource I found was this Municipal Financial Management Training and Resource page. I think a lot of the information is similar to the Finance Committee Handbook, but it's on the web and pretty easily accessible. But I think to me the gem on this page was the Finance Committee Handbook. And again, I had met with Karen and Heather a few weeks ago, and they referenced this book a few times, and I wasn't able to find it, and Karen helped me find it, and we got a copy. It is free to all the Finance Committee members, but I think I think we're all members of this organization, but if you're not, they charge a fee, so I'm not sure how we handle that from a public disclosure standpoint.
Well, I think from that, we can reference it in this document, and then if somebody becomes a member of the Finance Committee, well, then they are licensed, we can provide it to them.
Yeah.
I think that's adequate, because all you really need to do here is to reference to it in this document, and I think we're covered.
Right, okay.
Because the intent of this is really for new members. It's not, I mean, obviously it's a resource to the public, just in terms of I think that the next page that, deals with major funds and fund flows is actually, could be quite interesting to the public, so.
Yeah. And so before I jump to that next page, I will share this, the document. Not to go through it all, for sure, it's 150 pages or something, or 100 pages. But this Finance Committee Handbook by the Association of Town Finance Committees, it's got let me just get to the table of contents here. Again, just a lot of good information on what's a finance committee, different aspects of financial management. And then I actually really liked the glossary in the back, which I referenced a few times as I was trying to put this together. So, good resource.
So, one additional idea on the resources and reference material is our goals and procedures document.
Oh, that's right. Yep, that's a good one.
Which I think I maybe have neglected to actually put that in PDF after we voted on it and circulate it, now that I think about it. I'm not sure if I did that or not, so if I didn't, I will.
You've got a month.
I got a month. Well, I think we approved it like a month ago, so I think I may be negligent in doing that, so I'll provide that to you, and you
Okay,
can add that
great.
to the next.
And then the last page was, and it may be hard to read on the screen, I'm not sure, but the last page is something I've been wanting to do for a while, and part of volunteering for this was getting me to actually do it, was to sit down and diagram. I'm a very visual thinker, and I sat, and many thanks to the town manager and the finance director, we sat and kind of diagrammed out the way that some of these funds worked. And you know, I'm certainly far from an expert on any of this stuff, and the various interactions and flows, you know, Karen is extremely knowledgeable about. And so I really learned a lot just from talking to her and also to Heather. And so I put this together. They did give me some initial comments, but obviously on the left-hand side, I've got the town budget, which covers the general fund and the revenues and the expenditures, which are, you know, is pretty straightforward in a way, but I think it's helpful to have it laid out. At least for me, it is. And then on the right-hand side, just understanding the independence to some degree of the trust funds and the OPEB funds and all the special revenue funds. And what I would like to continue to do is keep working on this. I don't know that we need a final version at any specific point in time. I think we can keep developing this and taking comments. But I think building this out a little bit further and defining some of the terms and you know, and some of the restrictions on when funds can flow to certain other places like stabilization funds and what the limitations are and so forth. I haven't captured all that. And frankly, I think without sitting down again with, you know, with Karen and Heather, it's probably going to be pretty hard to do that just by trying to figure it out from the other documents. So I think another round or two with them would help develop this a little bit more.
So just a thought in terms of how you might also want to color some of these with respect to expenditures is that there are certain expenditures that are driven by state mandates, like education, you know, is largely driven by foundation funding formulas and those kinds of things. And like stabilization, capital, OPEB, those are driven by fiscal policy.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually put a little bit more than sometimes than policy mandates, but I do think it is interesting to kind of color that a little bit in terms of, you know, what our actual what our actual discretionary spending is relative to mandated spending.
Yeah. So I'll just stop my initial comments here with, you know, work in progress. I really would love to continue to develop this over time. Would love to have comments, but I think, you know, take comments from this committee, whether now or later, and then I'd love to come back, or I will come back and sit down with Karen again and Heather and go through, like, what else should we put on here on the next page, or maybe divide this up into separate pages and just get the highlights of what the major, you know, kind of the major restrictions or guidelines, et cetera. And certainly could expand this too to a debt page, which might be helpful as well. So at least the way I'm looking at this, kind of a living document that can be appended and expanded on, you know, in the finance committee over the next weeks, months, years.
I think it's good, and I think almost everything on the funds flow could almost go down a level for another level of understanding.
Yeah.
At least one.
Even
absolutely.
think like property tax, how does the levy work? What is the levy? What is Prop 2.5? What's an override? You know, all those kind of things that sometimes people think they understand, but truly, I think most people don't understand the ins and outs of Proposition 2.5. A lot of like the special revenue funds, there's actually a lot of rules associated with them,
Yes.
how much they can carry and blah, blah, blah.
And they're all quite different. Every single one of those is quite different.
Yeah, a lot of them actually tie right back to mass law too. So.
Yeah.
But I think this is
that's right.
great because you watch these meetings or if you're new to it, there's a lot of language I just don't understand. I mean, I'm still not sure I understand encumbered funds and non-encumbered funds and some, what is free cash, other than it's not free and it's not cash. I know
Well, you
that.
need to know.
I don't know how I know that.
Yeah, and I have to admit, one of the things I struggled with during the budget process and everything was, well, you know, you have one of the departments come in and they talk about their budget in entirety, many of them. But actually, you know, what's coming out of the general fund is just a subset of that. And then all the other things are in one of these, you know, special revenue or trust funds or whatever. And so it's hard to disentangle. And so I think even just going through this very basic page helped me to understand it a little better conceptually.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, you know. That a department head looks at their total funding to run their department, usually knowing to a certain extent what their revenue sources are.
Right.
But it's kind of incumbent on the finance committee to really understand those sources and how they interact with each other, you know, and back to that kind of, and what are the discretionary pieces of that, right?
Right.
I think you're right. And it's really, when we're in the thick of it, it's really easy to overlook or kind of run past, as I've done.
Yeah.
I would suggest also possibly putting in a general calendar, just to give new members an idea of here's where we're doing typically our policy work over the summer.
There you go.
We start ramping up for budget season pretty quickly. There's the capital season, which precedes your budget season, when town meetings are scheduled for, since they are sort of, they're set by policy.
Yeah. It's a good idea. I'm you know, I think there's kind of, we could make this a 50-page document, and I
Right.
think maybe we should. But I think that's a good one. That would be an easy one to do.
I certainly see it as a living document.
Yeah, yeah.
It is interesting when you compare and contrast what's in that state finance committee handbook versus what should be in our own onboarding document, right? Because the reality is that the state does provide some rough guidelines in terms of what a finance committee should be in a municipality, but in fact, our role is largely defined by the charter.
Yeah.
You know, and it's different from town to town. So the way we do things in Lunenburg is substantially different from the way they do things in Shirley, you know, and it is important that people understand what our role is here, you know, and I think that this is helpful in beginning to define that, or helping to define that. The charter defines it, but this is great additional context.
Any other questions or comments?
Nope.
Great work.
Great.
Thank you very much for putting it together. It's really good. All right, Mr. Beardmore. Bylaw amendment.
Yeah, so I intended to come here with a sad story about no progress on the bylaw amendment, but actually made tremendous progress in the last few hours. So I reached out to Mr. Murphy late last week to kind of, at first wanted to connect with him before town council in terms of rounding out that revenue, you know, whether an amendment could increase an appropriation or not, basically. And I was actually unsuccessful in getting a hold of him until today. So I did send the draft language to town council on Monday. Unbeknownst to me, he was on vacation this week, but did actually get back to me via email today with some questions on the language. The general feedback was, and I'm obviously paraphrasing his email, was he thought it was okay at face value, but he did have some questions pertaining to, in particular, that last sentence around presiding officials and you know, my intent there was really to kind of close some potential avenues for shenanigans where the bylaw might say one thing, but an article might be brought forth with language that's limiting. and therefore subvert the intent of the article. And so I've actually signed up for time with him during office hours on Tuesday to talk about that and potentially rewrite that last sentence. So suffice to say, we're a little bit behind the power curve in terms of where I intended to be with this, but I think we'll be in pretty good shape in terms of having time to discuss it once again at our first meeting in September, which, by the way, I intend to participate in remotely. I'm going to be out of town that week. And also have what I hope will be, once we're in agreement in terms of the language, a discussion around, do we discuss this with the select board at our proposed meeting on September 20th, or do we choose to not have that discussion or wait? And I did, right before this meeting, have a brief discussion with Mr. Jeffries, and he articulated to me that while that was on the list of things to talk about on September 20th, that's our purview. We can decide whether we want to talk about that or not with them. So I think we have a little bit of time to discuss that. In terms of getting it onto the warrant, I had suggested last week that maybe we want to look at some options on that, unaware of the thresholds we need to traverse for a special town meeting. So a citizen petition requires 100 signatures, verified signatures for a special town meeting, which I think we could get, but I'm not sure that any single person wants to put through the effort of actually going out and collecting those signatures. The select board has basically said they're willing to put it on the warrant as we propose, even though they are unanimously opposed to it at this point. So I think that that's given that they've extended that, extended their willingness to do that, I think we should take them up on it probably and go that route.
I think it's our chance.
I think it's probably the most expedient way of doing it.
I think it's also our best chance to get a public discussion, at least between us and the select board.
Yeah, it's a little bit of publicity, I mean, I think that ultimately, if this is going to pass, given the threshold that it needs to overcome, it's going to require a little bit of campaigning to get it there. I'm sure he won't. I don't think I'm saying anything out of school. Mr. Jeffries also told me that he thinks it'll be defeated. So, and I told him, well, we'll see at town meeting. So, so there is a bit of a. There may be a line on this one at some point, but I think that we can make a compelling case at town meeting, and I think we can convince voters to come to town meeting and to vote for this article. And then, I also think that at our next meeting, or prior to my departure from this committee, I think we should probably have a discussion in terms of how we intend to bring this forward at town meeting. And I think that I could certainly be of help and assistance to the Finance Committee in articulating and presenting this, but we do need to have that discussion at some point too. So.
Was there anything that Tim Murphy said that you wanted to?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, Tim believes that, or his feedback when I explained to him kind of the line of thought, particularly of that second sentence, that was, kind of specifying that articles shall not limit debate or amendments dealing with capital appropriations. He immediately saw the reason for doing that as, both he and town council, their position of limiting debate was the language of the article. So the heart of the matter is the language of the article, in the moderator's opinion. He did not see a need to address adding additional appropriations to the numbers in the article, because we're all sort of in agreement that that's out of bounds, and that's been standard practice in the past. So he doesn't view that as, unless we stipulated that it can or can't be done, that we would revert to what our practice has been and what his interpretation has been in terms of the metes and bounds of the warrant and what we put in the warrant. So I don't think that there's he didn't think there was a need to add to it. based on the discussion that we just had on the phone probably an hour and a half ago. So I will bring it up to town council on Tuesday, but I don't see a need to do that at this point. So, long way of saying progress being made, but more discussion needs to be had in our subsequent meetings on this.
The only issue that I have is a timing issue at this point, really. Just to make sure that we have enough time to discuss it, and we have enough time to make sure that we take a vote on it, and potentially get it up on the warrant.
Yep. No, I'm glad you brought that up, Evan. So my understanding is that we will have a regularly scheduled meeting on September 8th.
Correct.
And then our next regularly scheduled meeting after that is the 22nd. I believe the warrant closes before, I think it closes
2 days before.
2 days before on the 20th.
Right. So we'll have to act.
So we
either.
would need to determine that we're, officially going to make that. And again, I'm 90% sure where this is going, but we would need to basically vote on that on the 8th.
So we would need to have it discussed, amended, and voted on that day.
Yeah, I mean, we would need to close this out basically at that meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, which again, the timeline is not what I initially intended, but it's taken longer to get town council and the moderator,
If it's one or two sentences, which I think it should be, then it shouldn't be too
Well,
much.
yeah, I mean, it currently is about 3 sentences, so,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's not, we're not performing brain surgery here. I mean, the language is not as plain as I'd like it to be, and, I'm gonna work on that over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
So to set expectations, I think we're gonna need probably an hour on this at our next meeting.
I mean, there's the possibility that we may need to also push a vote to the 15th if we need to pull a special meeting, depending upon where that conversation ends up going.
We could technically vote on the 20th.
Yeah, we could.
We have quorum. So,
Yeah.
meeting.
My only,
Piece of good publicity.
my only issue is I'm actually not going to be available on the 15th, but that's not to say that you guys can take action if you wanted to.
Okay.
I'll be on an airplane that night, so there's no way I can participate.
Chris is calling in from Aruba. So yes, Mr. Jeffries did reach out, and his specific words were, the Finance Committee can also discuss concerns about the capital planning process. So, as far as I'm concerned, we should take that opportunity to have that discussion with them, in addition to the others. He did leave off ARPA funding, and from that discussion, they're gonna push that to another meeting, but I'll get to that a little bit
So
later.
ARPA will not be part of the discussion on the 20th?
Correct. He wants to solicit from all the boards and committees and commissions first, and then,
Get some finance committee feedback.
exactly, give everybody a chance to digest it, and then have another meeting later on.
I think that's fair.
I agree.
So what was the topic on the 20th again then?
It'll be 3, so debt capacity, financial policies that the Finance Committee thinks should be modified, and then capital planning process.
So we should probably put an agenda item on the 8th then to, revisit fiscal policy as well.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think we're gonna make any progress between now and the 20th on fiscal policy, given where we're at on financial planning, but, I do think that we need to articulate the point that there's work that needs to be done, particularly on debt capacity. And somebody needs to sign up to do that work, and
I started.
it isn't us.
Started looking at it a little bit, or at least I started reaching out to, I reached out to town manager and finance director to try and get that spreadsheet that we had been given by, at least I remember receiving a spreadsheet from our financial consultant.
Yeah, I have that somewhere.
Okay, I couldn't find it, they couldn't find it.
I've got it somewhere. I'll try to dig that out.
Okay,
But you're signing up for real work.
I know.
All right.
It's where I spend half my time anyways.
Okay.
What's another few days worth of spreadsheet work?
All right. Well, I'd be happy to discuss that with you.
Sure.
I know Chris has some thoughts too in terms of how we should come at that, but
Well, it's our next topic, so we can certainly get into it now. If there's anything else in the bylaw at this point, I don't see anything else. Okay. We'll close it out on the 8th, hopefully. So, debt capacity. Let's take that one first, I suppose. So, town fiscal policy. I suppose we should start with the debt capacity conversation again, which...
Yeah, so, to be clear, what the select board is doing is reviewing the fiscal policy, which is not insignificant. There's a lot there, and I would encourage people, if you haven't looked at the fiscal policy, to read it in its entirety. It includes, like how we direct funds to capital planning and, stabilization and those kinds of things, as well as limits for debt capacity. And what we discussed at last week's meeting was, I don't think, and to my knowledge, nobody's raised any concerns with any of the language of the policy. Like my view is it's pretty non-controversial, but if there is, or the public has any thoughts on the language of the fiscal policy, they should bring it to our attention, so that we can discuss it. But to my knowledge, there's really no controversy around the language. The potential issues have to do with those percentages in terms of debt capacity. And, my opinion is I don't know what I don't know. So while our debt service is declining and our debt capacity is growing, last year, this year, next year, it'll be pretty significant as the public safety building and the primary school fall off of it. Not significant relative to some of our other debt, but there's a good chunk of debt falling off. We don't know what we're going to borrow for next, how much it's going to be, and when it's going to happen. And without some kind of thumbnail idea, it's very difficult to say if those numbers are realistic or not. And that's kind of where we're at, right? So, so we could say, for example, we're going to put together a straw man borrowing plan that we're going to borrow $30 million to build a new elementary school. I'm just speaking facetiously here, but $30 million to build a new elementary school in 2 years. A couple $1 million on this building in Ritter 2 years after that, and another $20 million to rehab the old Turkey Hill and turn it into municipal offices in 2028. Right? We could throw those numbers around and realize that we probably don't have the borrowing capacity to do everything that I just mentioned. But then it's okay, well, what are the scenarios where we can make it fit? Or do we need additional borrowing capacity, or that kind of thing? And when you get into that spreadsheet, what you're quickly going to realize is that you can see the borrowing capacity from year to year to year, so long as you don't add additional debt. But once you add additional debt, you need to start making assumptions like, what's the term of that debt? What's the interest rate? What's the service? How does that service relate to our overall omnibus? And then it starts to get fairly complex, right? And that's where the hard work comes. And that work has just not been done, right? So we haven't figured out the assumptions, and we haven't done the hard work in terms of what that means for the capacity over a 10-year period.
I still think it needs to be done, though, because I think the idea that we approach this, and Chris, you've said it multiple times now, that we approach this from the standpoint of, we want to spend this much money, how do we do it, is the wrong approach. The approach should be, this is what we can afford that will bring us close to or at our debt capacity limit. Now, here's the chunk that you can spend this year. Here's, build a committee, design, have a committee go and decide what they're going to spend it on.
Yeah, I think that has to be part of the calculus. Now, here's the challenge that I think we have in terms of our internal capacity. We have awesome professionals that work for us, right? And we have a great finance team. We have a town manager who is an amazing budgeter and has put us on a path where financially we are more stable today than we have ever been in Lunenburg, I think, in my lifetime. And I'm saying that without really any reservation. Like, our financial shape today is better than it's been in probably 50 years. However, budgeting and financial planning are not the same thing. And I think that municipal financial planning, given the circumstances that we're in right now, is not part of a core competency that I think we have on our current staff, right? We need help from external financial consultants to help us do this. And we need the help of the town manager and the select board to go out and get that expertise.
I totally agree. I mean, I agree with everything you guys have said so far, and I think we just have to keep driving that point home, because without, these professional guys, and, they have models, they just plug it in, they can change the assumptions 10 times in 15 minutes, it's pretty easy.
They could probably
right?
do it in an hour, what it would take us to do in a week.
Absolutely. If we're building spreadsheets, we're wasting our time when someone can plug it in a specifically designed software that does that. So I think I agree with you. I think it's a prerequisite.
So I think driving into what that spreadsheet or financial model would have is that the town almost needs a vision document. A lot of municipalities that are embarking upon major projects have visions, right? I see it all through the Mideast, for example, where I go. So I look at their vision documents, and then they tie their priorities to those vision documents. So there's no reason we couldn't come up with a pretty simple vision document. What's Vision Lunenburg 2035? And then you start to say that this is how we prioritize things. Again, whether it's the capital plan, whether it's busing of students versus something else. You got to make these trades, and you got to say, this is the vision of this town. The rest of it can start to fall out of that.
Now, theoretically, the master plan, which is a whole other project, would touch upon a lot of that, but
I think the master plan should align to a vision. The parks plan should align to a vision. Muir last year gave they went through a process for their plan, right, for the library. These should all align to the visions of the town. And once you start to document it, and it's pretty simple, graphical, people get around it, I think then you can kind of say, well, this aligns to our vision.
yeah.
And we've had a lot of time to put that out there, people can comment on it, et cetera. So it could bind the town together from that perspective.
I agree. I just think, if past performance is indicative of future performance, we get some troubles.
So, but that's what I think.
Because it's really, every attempt that's been made, what actually comes out on the other end is very different than what was envisioned in the attempt.
But I think you've gone down to the plan level. So you start to execute, here's the plan on where we're going.
No, I
Again,
agree.
without a vision.
Without the vision, right. Fair point. Fair. Very fair.
I don't know.
I don't think it's the finance committee's role, though, to
I think there's a financial.
stipulate that vision.
No, but there's a financial component to it. And I think you're right, though, a lot of the executive boards are the ones that should establish. It's probably select board that ultimately would put together that first level of a vision. And maybe a lot of them have it in their mind. It's just a matter of documenting it.
The big blocks are exactly what I stated earlier, right? In terms of big projects and big expenses, right? We need municipal office space. We need to do something about a deteriorating elementary school. And those are the two big ones, right? And then we've got some historical structures like the building we're in that we need to deal with, right? Those are the really big blocks. Yeah, Marshall Park is one, 30 School Street is one. Like, those are out there. Sidewalks is seems to be an issue that's gaining some interest. We just got to figure out what the priorities are amongst that list.
I think it's a difficult ask, though, given the number of different groups that are involved in the planning process itself. I wonder, I like the idea of a general vision, but from your experience, who's typically drafted that? Has that come from high up? Has that come from outside consultants? Has that come from town meeting?
I mean, where you see it mostly is from high up. It's usually, I think it's usually drafted from high up. And they usually have like focus groups and consultants.
Yeah,
and
and I mean,
those
we
sorts of-
kind of, a few years ago, I don't know if it was ever really written down, but, you know, there was the plan of record that was described in a town meeting probably 4 or 5 years ago. You know, that was kind of the impetus of the last TC Passio's building committee, right? There was sort of a plan of, they literally called it a plan of record, although I'm not, again, I don't know that plan was ever embodied in a document, that kind of led in that direction. But since that's kind of gone off rails a year ago, it really hasn't been picked back up.
But again, outside of the vision, I do think having some kind of financial modeling is absolutely critical to it.
And it's, you know, it's a chicken and egg thing to a certain extent, as we talked about last week, but I think we've got to figure out how to advance the ball on the financial side.
I can reach out to town manager and finance director, because I know we have a financial planner or a financial consultant.
We have financial consultants, but when I engaged the town manager and the finance director a couple of months ago on this, the answer that I got was not what we just described in terms of what they could do for us. So I think that we need to ask them for guidance again. But I think what we're asking for is probably beyond what our current financial consultants are very kind of focused on, you know, like credit rating and benchmarks for different aspects of the budget and that kind of thing. I'm oversimplifying what they do, but and I believe they're also tied in with, you know, how we go about audits and comments and follow up and that kind of thing. This is a little bit different, right? This is a little bit more forward-looking than at least what we've seen from what we've done with them in the recent past. Again, just my impression. I've never worked with them directly, so
I suspect that if they don't do it, they would know someone that knows how to
hopefully,
do it.
yeah.
Right. Were they the ones that generated the spreadsheet, or was that you?
They generated, well, it was either them or Karen, but
I don't know if it was Karen. Karen sent me one, but it was not the same.
so the spreadsheet that I'm thinking of is the debt service spreadsheet.
Right.
It's in Excel.
Yep.
I believe that came from them,
That's my recollection as well.
but I couldn't swear to it. It's just my impression.
It's the one I couldn't find that I went searching for. Okay, I can reach out to them as well and at least get in contact with the financial planners and see if.
And also, that spreadsheet should be updated every year. I mean, theoretically, you can just kind of lob off if you're not doing any new debt service, you can just kind of lob off whatever year was most recent on the left. But technically, it should be updated annually.
Yeah, we should have that, you would think, the finance directors.
I'm sure it exists.
Okay.
If you find that, Peter, would you mind
Yeah, I'll
copying
send it
it?
around.
You want to have some fun too?
I have an aversion to Excel, but there are other people that.
What? It's un-American.
Any other discussion on debt capacity? At least for this week. We'll revisit again in a few weeks. ARPA spending. So I thought it would be good, even though we're not actually going to be discussing it with the select board, and I think it would be good to at least have a discussion to, at least have the finance committee's discussion as to possible scenarios or possible avenues for spending of ARPA funds, which to my recollection last stood at about $3.4 million.
Ish.
Roughly, give or take. And the restrictions that were placed on it originally have been heavily lifted, and it's effectively usable for just about any town municipal expense that you can imagine at this point. So far, the select board met with capital planning. They came up with a number of ideas, including a sizable chunk to Marshall Park, including potentially looking at money towards sidewalks, extension of sidewalks and whatnot. A few other ones as well. But as far as I see it, it's sort of just money on the table to be spent.
Well, I think that we do need to put some thought into the opportunity that it presents, in that it can be spent through executive action rather than going through even a town meeting appropriation, right? Like, it's a substantial chunk of money that 5 people can decide on. And I think that matters to a certain degree, right? It needs to kind of come into the calculus of it all. We went and borrowed $3+ million a few years ago to kind of catalyze the pavement program, right? Like, but that was an effort to go out and do that, right? We don't necessarily need to expend that political effort to do that with this money. And I think that could be part of the calculus. The discussion that happened a week and a half ago here with the Capital Planning Committee and the Select Board, they echoed my sentiment, which we discussed here a few weeks ago, around shovel-ready projects, right? So what can we do that we know is not going to require 3 years of planning and we can get moving on quickly? And I think that there's some value there, particularly with respect to the preliminary work that's been done for Marshall Park and maybe even 30 School Street, although I don't think that has the political support right now to move forward. But Marshall Park definitely has great momentum, and there's no source of funding really for Marshall Park other than grants, which we don't know what they are yet, right? So what Select Person Soroka suggested, and I tend to agree with her, is part of that money, I think she called it a substantial chunk of money, be reserved for Marshall Park, potentially as like matching funds for grants or that kind of thing, but to kind of kickstart that program. And I think that's as good as an argument as any so far in terms of major expenditures, because Marshall Park is something that the whole town can enjoy. It's not restricted to a particular demographic. Yeah, there's a lot of baseball played there, but it's something that, with the skate park and new parking and all the walking paths and those kinds of things, it could really benefit potentially everybody in town. And our parks have been neglected for a long time. There are other parks, so potentially Fitzgerald Field, potentially McNally Park, that are in need. And then, of course, over the course of the last couple of weeks, this discussion around sidewalks has come around, somewhat catalyzed by the busing discussion. But Jay circulated an email from the DPW director today. We got a lot of money to spend on sidewalk maintenance. Like, we're behind there too, right? So, should that be an area that we funnel a chunk of money to? In my mind, probably wouldn't hurt, right? And I think there'll be some other areas that will come up this month that we haven't even discussed or thought of yet that will also need to be kind of worked into that mix. But I think that those are really good areas of opportunity.
So with respect to Marshall Park, the next part of that process would be the design portion of it, and then move on to the implementation phase after that. And in addition, the other thing that we all know that goes on in Marshall Park is the skate park at some point will go in there. So time phasing everything with respect to that aspect of the project is kind of important. So I think the one immediate go-do with respect to Marshall Park would be to fund the design aspect of and over the winter is a good time probably to do it. And I do think, like you said, with respect to parks and fields and everything else, I mean, we even heard at the school board last night that there's 2 fields out of commission right now, right? 3 fields out of commission right now. So I do think
On the
like,
sideline, they're not out of commission, but they're not being used.
they're not being used, yeah. Yeah. And there's huge demands. And, I think there's even sports that haven't come into town yet. Lacrosse as an example. They go to, I think, Leominster to play, just because there aren't.
Youth lacrosse.
Youth lacrosse, because there aren't the fields for it, so. That seems pretty shovel-ready from the perspective of that next phase, I think.
Any other ideas, any other wishes, dreams?
It'd be good to hear from, like our normal process, what the departments and other committees
They will
have in
be.
mind too, right? 'Cause-
Mr. Jeffries is going to solicit from everybody.
so I do like that thought of collecting it, then discussing it with us.
But I would like to be able to at least present something to him to say this is at least an initial draft of what the finance committee has sort of thought as our, whether we tier them or whether we just group them as a whole. These are our ideas.
This is windfall money in my view, right? Like, it's money we didn't know we were gonna have even a couple of years ago. And there's a number of different strategies that we could take in terms of how we spend this money. We could say, we're gonna throw this all at infrastructure and get 3 years ahead of where we would be with culverts or something, right? Like, we could do that, right? The problem is that, none of us living our daily lives, who don't live near a culvert that would otherwise be shut down, would really notice the benefit of that money, right? It'd be kind of hidden, if you will. Not that it doesn't need to get spent, but it wouldn't be as visible as something like you could point to and say, we took this money and we're willfully improving the quality of life in Lunenburg with this money, right? And so when I think of Marshall Park, or even sidewalks for that matter, the problem with sidewalks is the benefit is kind of limited to the neighborhood that they're in. But a park, our parks get used by people all over town. And if they were better, they would be used by more people around town, is my theory.
And I think it goes to some of the original reason for the money to begin with, because I do think the getting out into, and being healthy and this sort of thing is part of some of the, the initial thought behind that money.
Well, it's interesting you were talking about that. You mentioned that, about the parks, but, and culverts. But you said before, which got me to thinking about 5 people, it doesn't have to go to town meeting. One of the things is things that we need to do, but maybe not politically
Popular.
And parks, I think, would be. I've been saying to people who listen that Marshall Park needs to be fixed up, and other parks around town too. Culverts might. I don't know what other things are, but things that need to be done but aren't sexy but they need to be done.
But the evidence is that there's really good programs and there's a willingness for earmarks around culverts and that kind of infrastructure, right? There's complete streets. We've gotten pretty good earmark activity on that. By the way, I agree with your reasoning, Tom, but I thought 30 School Street was a slam dunk at town meeting, right? Like, I thought it was going to go. Now, Jay disagreed with me, and we weren't unanimous on that. But I thought that there was pretty good support and reasoning for that, and there wasn't. We couldn't get 50% of the people at town meeting, to go for that. Not even the expenditure, the engineering for that expenditure. So, when you look at Marshall Park and you say $3 to $5 million, I'm not sure that that's a slam dunk, given our recent history.
I think it's not apples to oranges, though. You're talking about a building there's a section of the public that really loved the fact that there is this historical building that's there, and
It was
wasn't
mitigating factor.
previously
Yeah.
a park, and
Yep.
now we're talking rehabbing. So
Absolutely mitigating
I
factor.
think at least it has a little bit more capital to get past, but I agree.
I got the sense that, well, we're gonna fix up Marshall Park. We've been talking about that. Now you're gonna have another park almost across the street. You know, that was, some of the feedback that I was hearing, and, so that's the, but I'm gonna be very interested to see what the select board gets as far as from the departments and from whatever, because I have no idea what, DPW would want, or what any other department would want. And there might be some great things there that we say, oh yeah, that's something we need to do.
You're absolutely right. It's going to be interesting. I mean, like, I've had discussions with DPW, like, I think we need a vacuum truck, like, it'd be awesome if we, just to deal with these impending stormwater issues, and the fact that a lot of our catch basins are never cleaned because we never get to them, right? It's $1 million expenditure to get a vacuum truck, Like, I don't know if we'll ever be there. So, to your point, Tom, that would be something that, yeah, we get the money, let's go do it, and that's something that's gonna, serve us for 30 years, right? So, they're all good points.
There's also Town Beach,
Yep.
another one, but that again drives into the parks, but I'm sure we could probably replace that building for less than $3.4 million.
Slightly less.
I'll tell you what, have you guys seen some of those historical photos that have been showing up on Facebook recently around Whalum Lake?
Yeah.
The building that was there at some point, like 100 years ago, was much larger and it had a huge dock extending out in front of it. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, could we do that again? Like, that would be really cool. That might cost $3 million.
Well, the thing about the beach is that they really own, the way the building is set, there's another section that never gets used. I walk by it and drive by it almost daily, and I've never seen anybody over in that section that never gets used. Now, I don't know maybe that's where that big, long, massive dock used to be, because there used to be some things there. Now there's just picnic tables that are one on each other. And, the beach itself is on the other side, and it's either empty or it's full, depending on whether they have swim classes or not. But it's a resource that we're lucky enough to have in town. We should try to figure out how to make that available to as many people as possible, because not everybody has access to, the other lakes in town and or pools.
You could expand it beyond that as well and put another dock in there and have kayaks, have paddle boards, have ice skating abilities in the winter, assuming that we still get frozen lakes.
Yeah, just like a park, just a place to hang out.
Right.
I'd love to be able to go sit on a dock and drop a fishing line in for 10 minutes or something.
But we have this wonderful resource of a town beach, technically, that does get busy on some hot days, but I think it's a difficult spot to try and put anything in, so your only option is to expand out rather than around. Any other ideas, thoughts? We have another couple weeks anyways before we have to sit down and talk with select board, so. My plan is I'll probably send them off to Mr. Jeffries after the next meeting, so we'll bring it up one more time, just to see what else we have. All right, moving on. There is one set of minutes in the drive from last meeting. Anybody had a chance to actually look them over, read them?
I was good with them.
Yeah, I was okay.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve, disapprove.
So moved.
Approve.
Second?
To approve.
Second.
Discussion? Fantastic. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are cleared. Committee reports. Should be pretty quick this time. Board of Health has not met since we last met. Capital Planning, to my knowledge, has not met since we last met. I haven't heard anything from Mr. Passios. Council on Aging, we still don't have a liaison for, but I assume there's nothing too pressing yet for that one.
They gave a report too.
DPW, Jay sent out a nice email this afternoon. Do you want to go over that? Do you want me to go over that?
Well, you can see he, a couple purchase orders been submitted to purchase 2 vehicles. A 3/4 ton pickup and a 1 ton dump. Looks like those are being purchased, one for FY22, one for FY23. He's waiting on quotes for the 6-wheel truck with a sander and a plow, FY22. And that's at like $237,000 to $261,000. He's waiting on quotes for the 10-wheel dump truck with the plow, which they had budgeted $250, but the quotes are starting at $285 to $289. And then the wonderful tractor with the mower at $170,000, with one quote so far at $100 or $190,000. He's waiting on 2 quotes for that. So there's going to be, like he said, he'll be looking for additional funding to supplement those additional costs, if that's what the prices are coming in at. Then there was an issue with the cemetery, went over on the purchase of service already due to work they did cutting trees down and radar to locate grave sites and weed whacking. So they're gonna need supplement, it looks like they're gonna have to supplement that, move some money around to supplement that budget, and that's something will probably have to be looked at. Make sure that they have enough funding next year. And then I had asked about sidewalks. I saw the work that was being done over here at Lancaster down at Whiting Street. And we have a very small budget for sidewalks, $27,000. Don't go too far with that. But there's some money from the state, hang on, that he's hoping to use. Some plan, the sidewalks, 27,000, town report from 2020 ADA transition plan by Sandtech Engineering. The report's on the town website, and the report identified a backlog of about $270,000 worth of sidewalks and about $165,000 worth of sidewalk ramps. And the report recommending a multi-year approach to eliminate the backlog. And the repair work they're doing from Lancaster Road just down to Whiting Ave used up the $27,000 budget. However, he says there is $272,000 available from Mass DOT, a Winter Recovery Assistance Program, which can be used for sidewalk repairs. So hopefully they'll get funding from that and try and continue to finish the sidewalk repair all the way down to Rolling Acres, which is, there's a large development in there that would benefit from that. So, and I asked about the pavement management plan. It's in the final year of the 2016 to 2023 pavement management plan. We have a few streets to pave this fall, which will finish up the plan, and they recently contracted with Beta Group to produce a new pavement management plan for future roadway maintenance. There is a subcontractor, Cyval, CYVL, that's driving around town using LiDAR technology to evaluate the condition of roadways. So hopefully they'll have a new plan within a couple of months.
Excellent, thank you.
So, first of all, Jay, thank you for sending that email, and I think it's great that we got really good answers to all these questions. So, breath of fresh air, like awesome, right? That was my initial reaction. I think we should ask the town manager for some commentary, specifically around funding these shortfalls for capital, because I don't think we should drag our feet on any of those items. And if that means looking for an out-of-sync appropriation from free cash at special town meeting, I think we should consider doing that. Just so that we don't lose another year waiting to figure that out on some of these where there's a bigger gap. But she might have another idea or thought on that, and I think those conversations need to happen soon.
That's a lot of transfers to have to try and cover.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing on this, which I was kind of I'm sure it probably came up at a meeting, this winter recovery assistance program money, but I feel like we need a little bit more detail on how we intend to expend that money.
So I'm a little confused on the capital, because in town manager's ability to increase or decrease funding in those lines, because when we postulated what would happen if someone just arbitrarily said, I want the capital plan reduced by 20K, without an ability to target it towards one thing, what happened with that, right? The budget went down, it had to get put somewhere.
Town manager would have to reprioritize or refigure what goes where. To include eliminating some of those lines on her own.
So then can she reallocate and plus up things?
Assuming there's money available. Assuming there's money available in unspent capital in other lines. But if you recall, at last town meeting, we reappropriated a whole lot of unspent capital. So my impression is that there isn't a lot of wiggle room in terms of appropriated capital that is not going to something already.
Yeah, but they just get 100,000 earmark for the senior patio
Yeah.
Yes.
capital plan?
Yep.
So that puts $100,000
Theoretically, that's been plussed up 100.
Yeah.
Yep.
to help cover some of these other overages.
So can then she take that 100K and put it towards plussing up to 20, whatever?
Potentially,
year?
yeah, potentially.
And is
Yeah,
that,
it should come out of the capital plan first, if there's unexpended funds there.
Well,
what do you mean come out of?
so that's a good question. So now that I think about it,
Right.
I think we need some clarification from her on her interpretation of that, because theoretically, if that were true, if what we just surmised were true, we would never have to reallocate unspent capital, right? It would just roll over and the town manager could spend it as she sees fit. And I'm not sure, but I don't think that's necessarily the
But that was
case.
the heart of my misunderstanding,
Yeah.
of
No,
my
I-
misalignment with the interpretation last year on our ability to affect the line items of the capital plan.
It really needs clarification, given what we're about to go through with this bylaw. Just in terms of setting the scene of what's currently reality.
Like, I'm pretty sure they manage it as such, as a capital plan, you know, unique identifier associated with it, the project, the scope, but again, like, can she just unilaterally, or with select board approval, take that 100K and move it into the others?
I just think we need a game plan.
I would assume not, because
Well,
we had to
it's
reappropriate
in the
it
plan.
as a town.
I thought under the,
That's what we did at last town meeting. We reappropriated unspent capital funds.
But we didn't, to be clear,
it was,
we didn't reappropriate unspent capital to the capital plan. We
Right.
reappropriated unspent capital to the budget, or to reserve funds and that kind of thing. So I don't actually, we need some explanation, I think, because I don't,
So basically the question is the appropriated capital budget sum, is it the sum, or is it the individual lines that can be moved? In other words,
yeah.
does she have the ability to take $3 million that's been appropriated for capital funds for the capital plan? And if it comes in, if one of them comes in 50,000 under, one comes in 50,000 over, can she simply just do an individual line item transfer herself? Or is it broken down with each one of those codes that goes to capital
Yeah.
plan?
So my interpretation is the former. She can move that money.
Okay.
That's within her purview.
I will reach out and ask.
We should get that in the new member onboarding.
I think the
But
town
but-
council said something about that at the annual meeting.
But I also think that there probably isn't enough money to cover all those shortfalls.
No, but 100K would cover some of it.
Some of them.
Well, that's assuming that the project is going to only cost 100K.
Well, I think Jay's
Well-
thing said that there was a couple that were like 20K under, or
No, I'm saying the,
potentially.
If you think we're getting that patio for 100K, given everything else we're looking
right,
at.
right. So I'm not, I
Might
don't
cost a
think,
little more than
I
that.
don't think we're gonna have 100K to transfer.
Right.
We might have 60, we might have 80, we might have 99, who knows? We also might have 10K.
We don't know.
But it does raise the concern
Yeah, if it all
of,
balance out at the end of the year, we'll know
Yeah.
what those projects are completed,
I'd be curious to know,
if they get completed.
what the current situation of all of our capital quotes are at.
Yeah. I think I think we should formally ask her to brief us at our next meeting
Yeah.
on all of the above. And then, yeah, and then the other thing, I mentioned this, but we got down the capital rat hole. I think that $272,000 is not an insignificant amount of money. That should more than cover, getting the sidewalk down to Rolling Acres. I don't know. I'm not a sidewalk guy, so I don't know. But I think that we probably need a little bit of detail in terms of what our plans are for that money.
We definitely need to improve sidewalks.
Was it some of that 272 probably used for plowing?
I don't know.
Winter recovery assistance?
Yeah,
As
that
far as
sounds like,
Damage from plows.
right, right.
Okay, yeah.
Et cetera, to do repair work from winter damage.
Or also, could we use some of that money to cover our capital needs for
We don't,
10-wheel dump trucks?
It's a good question for Bill.
tractors with plows.
All right, green communities, anything from green communities?
The green community, land use, and municipal buildings have not met yet since
Okay.
last meeting. We are meeting, municipal buildings meeting on Monday.
Perfect. Any update from library?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Parks,
Nope, nothing since last meeting.
fire and police?
Nope, don't have anything.
Anybody talk to sewer lately?
No.
Okay. And the big one, school committee.
Nothing going on there.
So last night, I'm sure plenty of parents tuned in. I knew that at one point we were up to like 37 people that I could see.
Wow.
They took a lot of public comment on the busing issue of enforcing a long-standing policy that I believe dates back to 2005, if I'm not mistaken, that says that anyone within 1.5 miles of the schools can be made to walk to school as opposed to ride the bus. And they're not guaranteed to have bus transportation. There are some caveats with 3rd and 4th graders and 5th graders and who can get off the bus and whatnot as well. But the long and short of it is that the school committee took immediate action to grant the superintendent the authority to rework the busing to allow for anyone that wants to, as many people as possible that would like to be have their children on a bus for the upcoming school year, at least in the short term. The long term, they're going to revisit the policy. They're going to do a whole bunch of other work, whether that's going to, I believe they're planning to try to look at what they can do for the contract that exists as well. But as of now, Dr. Burnham has quite a job ahead of her in the next 4 days, I believe, 4 working days before school starts. But I think they certainly did the right thing, and I commend them for it. I'm sure it was not an easy conversation to have with a lot of the parents, but as it stands now, the majority of kids should at least have rides to school on a bus. Other than that, I don't believe there was too much else that was discussed last night.
Pretty narrow meeting. Can I just offer one caveat on library? So I actually popped into the library this week to borrow a couple of books and had a brief conversation with Muir, and He mentioned that he is in the hiring process for those 2 positions that we approved last year. And if all goes according to plan, which he seemed pretty confident that he was going to be able to pull it off, the library would be open on Fridays by mid-September was kind of what he led me to believe, within the next few weeks. So I think that's good progress. I know that there was some expectation with some people like, oh, it's going to be open right at the beginning of the fiscal year, but you got to go out, you got to hire the people, you got to train them, you got to rework your schedule, you got to do all that stuff. So there's a lagging effect, and but it is coming together. The other thing that he mentioned that he had mentioned during his last presentation here was that he had gone for some state grants around buying materials for STEM programs that had gotten, I think, some input from the school department in terms of stuff that would help to augment some STEM curriculum and help kids, inspire them to do, science and technology related stuff. They got the grant. It was nearly $15,000, and they're buying materials primarily intended to be, circulated materials, but are also looking at space within the library to do like workshops with different age groups to actually put those materials into some kind of activation within the library itself. So I thought it was a really good. They're doing good stuff.
Excellent. That reminds me as well, the DPW, this was one of the things, Jay.
Yeah.
They were short 3 equipment operators, but apparently they've offered it to 3 candidates and 2 have accepted. So we do have we're short 1 equipment operator for now, but the other 2 should be starting September to October timeframe. So with any luck, we should be up and running for winter with a full DPW staff. So that'll be good too.
Yeah, they'll need that.
Any public comment from the board or committee? Hearing none. Any public comment from the public? Also hearing none. Ideas for future meetings? Aside from the obvious, anything else anyone's dying to talk about in the next few weeks?
When do we start inviting the department heads in for the informal meetings? Well, that's the formal budget presentation.
February.
Right, that doesn't start until February.
February 23rd.
I think September and October could probably be good. We could probably start that after the warrant has closed. So maybe for that 23rd, I can reach out and start seeing if we can have informal meetings with some of the department heads.
I would advise that, at a minimum, since you got new personnel coming in, that there ought to be a discussion with the DPW director and the new facilities director, just in terms of putting a name with a face and getting first impressions and those kind. I don't think there's going to be time to do every department like we've done in some years, just because it's already late in the summer. But I'd love to see discussions with those guys.
I personally would be interested in schools laying out what they see as their kind of plan, their 5-year plan on hiring and teachers and all that, like they've usually done. And I think it's better if they focused it in the fall, so that come budget season, it's more about the budget. And we've already heard about kind of some of their plans. What's their hiring plan? What other kind of big things do they have coming up? Because otherwise, I think that school committee meeting, the school budget meeting could go really, really long.
I like that idea. Just save the actual budget meeting for just the budget.
Or, you know, minor updates if there's something that's come up. But, yeah, focus it more on the budget during budget season.
Personnel plan, that high-level look in the fall.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other ideas, topics? Excellent. So upcoming meetings, we have one scheduled for September 8th, and then we have our joint meeting. I'm still waiting to get a time, unless I actually got a time. I might have gotten a time.
It was like
7:15?
7:15, correct? Yep. So we have 45 minutes at 7:15 with the select board on September 20th in the room. And again, that will be to discuss primarily capital planning process, debt capacity, and financial policies. So nothing necessarily related to ARPA. It's going to be long enough as it is. We'll push that off another couple months.
Given that we have the 20th, do we still need the 22nd? It doesn't seem like there's much pressing.
Depending upon where these, if we get a chance to get the DPW head in or facilities head, I'm going to keep it on there just for now,
Okay.
just because we are short on time with getting any sort of department heads in, or at least conversations with some of the department heads. So it may be a short meeting, but it may be a necessary meeting, unfortunately. All right. With
Kevin,
that-
what's the timeline on the ARPA request? Was there a no later than from the department heads?
The 30th
30th of September or October?
September.
Okay, so,
So that may be another, that's another topic we'll have to, well, if we, depending upon what we get on the 8th. I mean, unless
Yeah,
somebody
but-
comes.
in reality, you probably want to have that conversation in October, not in September.
Right. Well, they want to have all the inquiries should be done by the 30th. And then sometime in the fall or winter is when they want to solicit advice from us. So, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Fantastic. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned as of 8:28 PM. Thank you very much.